Toprak Razgatlıoğlu came to MotoGP expecting a new chapter. Instead, he walked into a universe that rewrites itself every morning. A bike still searching for its own identity, tires that don't remember him, brakes that greet him like a sudden gasp in the dark. Nothing behaves the way his instincts expect, yet everything demands he trust it instantly. The Yamaha V4 growls with promise and danger in the same heartbeat, carrying him into corners where the air feels heavier, the force is sharper, the uncertainty nearly intimate. And as he leans into a machine still being invented beneath him, a single question hangs over the paddock like a charged silence. What happens when one of the world's most gifted riders meets a future no one is prepared for, not even him? MotoGP enters 2026 like continent shifting under its own weight, and every engineer knows the tremor is only the prelude to something far greater. Engines shrinking to 850 cubic centimeters tear up 2 decades of accumulated knowledge, leaving factories naked before physics once again. Aero restrictions dull the sharp wings that once carved the air with surgical precision, and the ban on ride-high devices removes the mechanical crutch riders learn to trust like a second spine. Toprak listens to the paddock murmur and thinks, the bike I dreamed of riding no longer exists. This one is a stranger waiting to be understood. The shift from Michelin to Pirelli in 2027 looms quietly, an unspoken promise that the asphalt itself will learn a new language. As one Yamaha insider bluntly repeats from the briefing, engines are shrinking to 850cc. Ride-high devices will disappear, the move from Michelin to Pirelli tires in 2027. The engineers whisper about a barely known fact. The new 850 cubic centimeters combustion cycle changes exhaust pulse timing enough to alter rear grip feel mid-corner. The season feels like standing in a room where the walls are moving millimeter by millimeter, invisible to the eye but deafening to the soul. Every simulation run overnight becomes outdated by morning. The sport, once predictable in its chaos, has become a river breaking its own banks. Teams scramble to decode stability without the rear squat devices that once locked the bike during acceleration. The riders hide their anxiety behind practiced smiles, but the tension spills into subtle gestures during debriefs. Toprak senses the weight of expectation pressing into his shoulders like a slow, unrelenting tide. Engineers note how even tiny aero trims reshape corner entry turbulence, forcing new braking markers across half the calendar. In quiet moments, he wonders whether mastering this era requires unlearning everything that made him a champion. The paddock breathes differently now, faster and shallower, as though preparing for an impact no one can fully predict. Data sheets no longer resemble past years. They look like a different sport entirely. It becomes clear that prior habits are not assets but ghosts. Expectations dissolve as the true scale of change emerges. And in this vast and trembling landscape, one truth rises like a final, echoing note. Nothing old will save anyone now. The myth started long before Toprak even touched a MotoGP prototype, spreading through forums, paddock corridors, and whispered predictions like a story people wanted to believe. Fans painted him as the chosen one, a rider arriving with Pirelli already etched into his bones, ready to exploit a future others had yet to touch. Yet inside this noise, Toprak wonders quietly, why do they think the tire will ride the bike for me? Pirelli's Giorgio Barbier slices through the narrative with the calm of someone who has seen generations of champions rise and fall. He repeats without hesitation, I think they won't have any major problems understanding a new tire. I don't see any major issues, and immediately adds that elite riders like Carlos Checa, Troy Bayliss, Alex Barros, Max Biaggi understood the tires immediately. The truth is colder than the myth. MotoGP's future Pirellis have a stiffer bead interface to handle prototype loads, a detail unknown to most fans and irrelevant to Toprak's WSBK past. The paddock loves simple stories, but the sport rarely allows them. In this case, the world forgot that dominance in one category never guarantees fluency in another. Barbier sees adaptation as a universal trait, not a selective reward. The narrative collapses when confronted with real engineering rather than superstition. Toprak listens, not offended but amused, because he has always ridden by instinct rather than prophecy. The myth overlooks the reality that riders learn tires the way musicians learn new instruments, through feel, repetition, and humility. And like a violinist switching to a cello, the similarities matter far less than the differences. Barbier's words redirect the spotlight towards skill, not brand nostalgia. The more people cling to the idea of an inherited advantage, the more the coming reality promises to humble them. Toprak understands this better than anyone, sensing that expectations can become shackles. As the myth dissolves, a sharper truth rises in its place. Adaptation, not past glory, will define the future. And as the final illusion breaks, one message echoes across the paddock like a bell struck at midnight. Toprak's advantage was never Pirelli, it was always himself. The revelation arrives not with drama, but with the quiet authority of a man who knows exactly how myths die. And Toprak feels the weight of that truth settle on his shoulders like a cold morning mist. Barbier explains with clinical precision that Pirelli MotoGP tires won't behave like the WorldSBK tires. They will be entirely different, a phrase that ripples through the paddock and shatters months of assumptions. Toprak listens in silence and thinks, so even the rubber is a stranger here, nothing follows me from the past, and the thought is both unsettling and strangely freeing. The technical reality is brutal. MotoGP's Pirelli front uses a larger rim diameter that forces new lean angle load paths, subtly changing the timing between contact patch deformation and steering input. Barbier reinforces the point by adding that MotoGP uses larger rims and specific dimensions, different carcass construction, different stress profiles, a statement that feels like a slow dismantling of a narrative built too quickly. Fans once imagined Toprak stepping into MotoGP like a sailor returning to familiar waters, but the truth is closer to landing on a coastline he has never seen. The difference in carcass rigidity alone transforms braking feel, demanding a recalibration of instinct at speeds where hesitation becomes a form of self-destruction. In this moment, the myth of familiarity dissolves as cleanly as rubber heated past its limit. Some in the garage lean in to whisper that MotoGP's tire is more like a musical instrument tuned to a different octave, similar shape, different soul. The smallest detail, like the altered shoulder band thickness, changes how the front speaks back to the rider mid-corner. Engineers take notes, riders trade glances, and Toprak senses that he is stepping into a world where instinct must be rebuilt from scratch. The tire becomes not an ally from his past, but a silent test of who he can become. The paddock, always hungry for certainty, suddenly realizes it has none. And as the last fragments of the supposed advantage fall away, a new tension rises in its place. Expectations tremble, illusions crack, and one truth stands tall amid the uncertainty like a lighthouse in a shifting storm. Toprak enters MotoGP with no shortcuts, only the road ahead. The paddock loves to talk about talent, destiny, and natural compatibility, but Barbier's words cut through all that noise with the precision of a scalpel. He states calmly that those who have more time and more opportunities to test our tires throughout next year will have a slight advantage in 2027, and the room feels the shift instantly. Toprak absorbs the message in silence, thinking, so even here I start from zero like everyone else, and the realization humbles him more than any lap time. In MotoGP, the stopwatch is brutal, but time on the calendar is even more unforgiving. The secret that few outside engineering circles know is that the new Pirelli prototype uses a revised heat cycle retention layer, meaning performance depends heavily on repeated test cycles rather than rider familiarity. This makes every test day a form of currency, and no rider, Toprak included, gets more to spend. Journalists expected his superbike heritage to carve him a shortcut, but shortcuts don't exist in a championship where the ground itself is being rebuilt. In garages, mechanics exchange looks that mix curiosity and quiet apprehension, because they know mileage, not mythology, decides who adapts first. Barbier's statement turns the entire narrative inside out, transforming Toprak's perceived advantage into a shared starting line. The metaphor is simple. It's like planting a seed in soil you've never touched. Past gardens don't help you understand this earth. Engineers quietly recalibrate their simulations, now aware that experience from any previous category is little more than noise. The MotoGP world watches, and for the first time, the expectation around Toprak becomes more about patience than prophecy. Fans may cling to legends, but the sport marches to the rhythm of test schedules and tire temperature data. The bitterness of this truth tastes real, almost metallic, in the back of the Yamaha box. The myth doesn't just fade, it collapses under the weight of measured hours and controlled laps. And as this new reality settles like dust after a long storm, the paddock learns a lesson it won't forget. In MotoGP's future, time is the only advantage, and nobody starts with extra minutes. Yamaha's garage feels like a laboratory caught between genius and panic, its new V4 humming with the uncertainty of an unfinished sentence no one dares to punctuate. Alex Rins gives the first raw verdict, admitting that the braking feels significantly better, but still lacks some speed. I'm aiming to enhance traction, and the words land heavily on every engineer in the room. Toprak listens from the corner, thinking, so even the factory is learning in real time? I'm climbing a staircase they're still building. The bike promises potential, but its nature shifts lap after lap like a river that hasn't chosen its course yet. Rins adds, all the riders need to pull in the same direction. Unity is more important than ever, and suddenly Yamaha's future feels fragile enough to crack under a single disagreement. A rarely discussed technical truth lingers beneath the surface. The V4's crankshaft inertia map is still incomplete, causing micro-delays in throttle pickup that complicate mid-corner commitment. This detail alone can turn confidence into doubt in a heartbeat. Every datasheet reveals small contradictions, more stability in braking, less traction in exit, promising torque but unpredictable heat distribution. The bike behaves like a creature waking for hibernation, powerful yet disoriented. Engineers chase solutions like cartographers drawing maps while walking through fog. Toprak watches the chaos unfold, aware that his adaptation will be judged even as the machine itself continues to evolve beneath him. He feels the strange intimacy of learning a bike that doesn't yet know itself. The Yamaha box, normally calm, now pulses with the quiet tension of competing ideas. Conversations stretch late into the night, filled with cautious optimism and suppressed frustration. Every lap becomes both discovery and warning. Riders sense that mastering this V4 requires faith in an answer Yamaha hasn't found yet. Toprak breathes deeply, absorbing every vibration, every hesitation, every whisper of potential from the engine beneath him. The struggle is not just technical, it's existential. And as the garage lights flicker in the late hours, one undeniable truth emerges with cinematic clarity. Toprak isn't entering a project, he's entering a revolution still writing its first page. Valencia expected fireworks, but what it witnessed instead was a storm held tightly inside its own clouds, waiting for the right moment to break. Fans leaned over the barriers anticipating stop-bys, rear slides, and Toprak's usual defiance of geometry, yet he delivered something far more unsettling: restraint. His manager Kenan Sofwoglu revealed the truth with disarming candor, saying he's careful at the moment. He's very scared to make mistakes. There is just one V4 for Toprak, and the paddock collectively inhaled. Toprak walked back to the box thinking, I must not break the only machine that carries my whole beginning, a confession he whispered only to himself beneath the helmet. His laps flowed like a river, deliberately avoiding its own deepest currents, smooth but never wild, precise but never brutal. Sofwoglu added, probably after a couple of tests, we will see the real Toprak, and those words ignited a new tension inside Yamaha's garage. A little-known technical detail reveals why caution mattered. The prototype V4 still lacked duplicate component sets, meaning any crash risked weeks of development loss. Yet even with the handbrake on his instincts, Toprak clocked times ahead of Rins and Miller, an irony sharp enough to draw blood. Each lap carried the sound of a rider holding back a storm, the motorcycle moving beneath him like a musical instrument he refused to play at full volume. Engineers watched the telemetry in stunned silence as they realized his straight-line inputs were gentle, almost hesitant, like someone touching an unfamiliar piano key by key. The garage buzzed with a quiet disbelief, because everyone knew this wasn't even close to his limit. The paddock's expectations, once inflated by fantasy, now faced a more dangerous truth. His discipline was its own kind of spectacle, calm, calculating, beautiful in its patience. Even the tires seemed to wait for him, warming slowly as if aware they had not yet tasted his real aggression. Each sector time felt like the outline of a masterpiece sketched lightly in pencil. Nothing wild, nothing reckless, yet undeniably fast. And as Valencia exhaled after his final lap, the realization hit with cinematic force. If this was Toprak restrained, the real show hasn't even started. Barbier delivers his final verdict with the quiet authority of someone who has watched entire technical empires rise and crumble, and his words sweep away the last traces of the myth surrounding Toprak's arrival in MotoGP. He knows the paddock desperately wants simple answers, yet he refuses them with a clarity that almost feels poetic in its sharpness. Andrea Locatelli distills this truth in a single, unforced sentence. They are two talents. They have shown the level is high, and hidden behind that simplicity lies a weight few dare to confront. Toprak hears it and thinks, my future won't be shaped by what I was, but by what I'm willing to become, carrying the thought like a small ember glowing steadily inside his chest. The core of MotoGP success isn't tire comfort or brand memory. It's the raw choreography between instinct, mechanical violence, and courage under pressure. A detail few outside the inner circle understand is how prototype chassis flex behaves unpredictably under asymmetric loads, forcing riders to learn the bike's language inch by inch rather than relying on old habits. In that delicate, silent exchange, the past fades into irrelevance. Barbier sees it clearly. This category crowns those who adapt, not those who remember. Toprak's brilliance comes from sensing grip where others feel chaos, from reading vibration like a melody, from breaking with a confidence that bends the laws of fear. MotoGP demands emotional resilience as much as speed, a willingness to face uncertainty without blinking. Reporters cling to the tire narrative, but the real story is far more human and far more dangerous. Every lap will test his nerve, not his familiarity. Every corner will reveal his truth. And when all distractions fall away, one certainty remains. Toprak won't rise because of what lies beneath the bike. He'll rise because he was born to transcend whatever stand in front of him. Barbier delivers his verdict with the calm gravity of someone who has watched eras rise, collapse, and be rebuilt from dust, and his voice gently strips away the lingering myth surrounding Toprak's move to MotoGP. He knows the paddock wants an easy storyline, yet he refuses to reduce this moment to anything simplistic. speaking with a precision that borders on poetry. Andrea Locatelli echoes that clarity when he says, "They are two talents. They have shown the level is high," a line that seems light but carries a weight deeper than the asphalt they race on. Toprak hears it and murmurs to himself, "What comes next will depend on what I create now, not on what I've done before," letting the thought warm him like a slow-burning spark. Success in MotoGP isn't born from tire familiarity, but from surviving the fierce dialogue between rider, machine, and courage. Few realize how prototype chassis flex shifts under uneven loads, forcing each pilot to understand the bike's true language one corner at a time. In that delicate exchange, old habits fade into silence. Barbier senses this perfectly. MotoGP rewards those who evolve, not those who cling to memory. Toprak's strength lies in feeling grip where doubt usually grows, in turning vibration into information, and breaking with a faith that defies fear. This sport demands emotional stamina as much as speed, a willingness to meet the unknown without retreating. Reporters try to root the narrative in tires, but the heart of this story is far more human. Each lap will measure his nerve, not his history. Each turn will reveal who he truly is. And when the noise falls away, only one truth remains. Toprak won't rise because of what he carries from the past, but because he was built to push beyond everything that limits him.